Welcome back to another episode of Warren Cali. In this episode, I'm going to detail the story of how an innocent child was murdered. Alaysha Carradine was an 8-year-old young girl from Oakland. She was often called Ladybug by her family and friends. On July 17, 2013, Alaysha would spend the day with her friend Amara and her family and was watched by Amara's grandma Clara. They would do things like go to the mall, play at the playground, and get ice cream, and the girls would have a sleepover. Shortly after 11 p.m., Claire was dozing off on the couch in a darkened apartment while the kids were upstairs playing. Amara heard her knock at the door, and she opened the front door that night, expecting to see her mother, who worked late night shifts at a hospital. Amara opened the door with her 4-year-old brother and Alaysha by her side. Clara said she heard what she thought was firecrackers, and she saw flashes of lights and the children retreating. Then Amara rushed back to the door and slammed and closed it. Alaysha fell to the floor, then Clara called 911. All 4 would be shot and rushed to the hospital. A paramedic assisted with Alaysha's injuries and found multiple bullet wounds. She found the post and asked Alaysha what happened and what she knew. Alaysha said she'd been shot and said it was by a man. The paramedic recalled Alaysha's condition and it deteriorated on a short ride to the hospital. The paramedic began to ask Alaysha questions to try to keep her aware and awake. She would say that Alaysha let out a scream and said, "I'm dead," where unfortunately, Alaysha would later be pronounced dead at the hospital. Alaysha's death shocked the community and beyond because of her age and because of the brazen attack at a sleepover where children were.
Their grandmother, just a terrible situation.
Oh, one of her very first sleepovers ever. And she ends up dead. Can you imagine the call to that mother? Clark Goldband, take me through the crime.
Sure, Nancy. We obtained crime scene photos. Let's take you through it. Behind me, you see the home. This is the crime scene, and what happened is that suspect runs right up to the front door, and if we advance onto the next screen, guys, you can see a close-up of the door, and he continues. He doesn't stop. In fact, he opens fire, at least 12 shots, fire through the steel gate, and then behind that gate, there you see the door in the background. Let's take a look at that. And Nancy, perhaps one of the saddest aspects of this story, according to authorities, you can hear the girl screaming, "Don't let me die." Now, people are surprised. Why can you hear this? I'll show you why. Take a look behind me. You hear the girl screaming, "Don't let me die." Why can you hear that? Law enforcement now wearing this state-of-the-art body camera, and it recorded the whole thing. It certainly will come into evidence.
Her name was Alaysha, but everyone who loved her called her Ladybug. Friends and family spelled out that term of endearment in front of the door with bullet holes still visible.
Her last little words was, "I know that I'm gonna die." Like, we can take that as something bad and say that's awful that an 8-year-old should know that she's getting ready to die. Or we can take that as she's just a very intellectual little girl that wanted to leave a stamp on everybody's heart.
We can take it as both.
We can take it as both. But we want to say that this is a horrific thing that happened to us, and I hate that it happened to us because this is tearing my heart apart right now.
It was clear how much Ladybug was loved. The sense of loss was felt by everyone, and a candle was held high in her honor.
I just want my baby back. I just want one more hug, and one more kiss, and one more "I love you." That's it. That's all I want.
Chiquita says that Ladybug's funeral will be next week. She says she is very sad that her daughter is gone, but she is grateful for the 8 years she was on this earth.
Many showed up for Alaysha's funeral and dressed in pink, her favorite color to represent her.
Sadness and heartbreak today at the funeral for the 8-year-old girl who was shot while attending a sleepover in East Oakland earlier this month. Crown 4's Maureen Kelly shows us the emotional video you will only see on 4.
Here you can see Alaysha Carradine's small pink coffin being carried out of the funeral home. Her 8-year-old body tragically too light a burden for her pallbearers, but the grief of her loss weighed heavy on her mother and other friends and family who packed the chapel to say their goodbyes. Cameras were not allowed inside during the service, which overflowed with well-wishers. I can tell you her mother spoke to the crowd, saying her daughter was now her guardian angel and that she would pray to her. One of the other people who spoke was this little girl. She said she was Alaysha's BFF and that she's cried for all the things they hadn't gotten to do together. She was one of several speakers who had to cut short her remarks because she was choked with emotion. Quite a few tears were wiped away for the little girl known as Ladybug. Her coffin was loaded into the hearse along with Hello Kitty balloons. Several mourners wore pink, her favorite color, in her honor, and white, representing her purity. Nearly everyone wore a badge with her picture. Others bore her likeness on their clothing. Many here expressing their frustration over the senselessness of her death.
Months later, the killer and accomplices were later identified at a heavily attended news conference. Authorities said that Darnell Williams of Oakland was among those arrested, and police linked him to a separate homicide in Berkeley. Alameda County District Attorney Nancy O'Malley said Darnell is a convicted felon and gang member who pulled the trigger on the night of July 17th in Oakland in the 400 block of Wilson Avenue when 8-year-old Alaysha was killed at a sleepover where her 2 young friends and a grandmother was injured. Authorities will say that Alaysha and others were not the intended targets, but part of a gang retaliation binge, and that Darnell was looking for someone at the apartment. Darnell was a part of a crew that Joseph Carroll, who I did a previous episode about, was with. They all went on the craziest murder crime spree. Several years later, Darnell would go to trial with his lawyer, denying that he could have did the shooting because it was lack of evidence. At trial, it was said that Darnell went to the apartment where the sleepover was held, looking for a man named Antoine York, who was believed to be responsible for killing his friend, Jermaine Davis. The apartment belonged to York's ex-girlfriend and the mother of his 2 children. So as the door was opening, Darnell shot 13 times. Over 30 witnesses would come forth against Darnell, and the main witness was a woman he had drive him to the crime scene. She would tell everything to get immunity. Darnell was later convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted murder, and assault with a semi-automatic firearm, as well as 3 special circumstance allegations committing multiple murders, and lying in wait in a shooting that claimed Alaysha's life, and killing another man during the course of an attempted robbery. Darnell will be sentenced to the death penalty. Alaysha's family will celebrate the verdict. Alaysha was only 8 years old, and life was unfortunately cut short. R.I.P. to her.
We're happy. All charges.
Can you tell us how obviously it's been a long time?
We waited 3 years and it's finally over.
Hey, you guys, can you please?
This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, make sure you check out my previous episodes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.